So where we're at is, sitting here, we've got 2 months left in 2021. Amazingly enough, yes, we've made it through 2020 and almost through 2021. And it's getting to that time of year where, you sort of look back at what have we done? What do we want to do next year? The Developreneur world is a little different because at this point I think we've been on this mentor schedule for 2 to 3 years, maybe. A lot of what we've done has sort of settled in. We haven't made any major changes in the last couple of years. And that's sort of what I talk about is looking forward, look at a little bit at what we've done, but more like, what do we want to do next? What are some of the things we want to cover? So, just sort of where we're at. So Developreneur itself, this has been around for solidly over 5 years. Where we started the mentor classes about 5 years ago, maybe 5.5. And those have been running for quite a while. We had blogs along the way. We've done countless tutorials. The YouTube channel is about 2 years old. I think I started beginning of January last year. So that's, cranking along. Got a book that cranked out a couple years ago. The podcast it's just finished its 15th season. And over, I think we're like 525 episodes or something like that. So that's just been, cranking along. That being said, we've got tons and tons of content. We've been churning it out at a regular basis, and we've got all kinds of stuff we want to continue to cover. So I think that's going to continue. But it just seems like a good time to stop, take a breath, look around, see what we want to do. And particularly since a lot of what we've done in the past has been more or less me and Michael sitting down and talking through things and looking at what we've done, what we want to do, and build it. I want to make sure that this time we had a little bit more of the community feedback and just thoughts and ideas and things like that of where we want to go next. So, generally speaking, the way Developreneur is set up is that, we want to just help people become better developers. One of the things becoming much more prevalent is the whole remote work. So people are not commuting as much, which changes, things like listening to a podcast while you're commuting back and forth to work. You don't necessarily need to do that anymore. You don't have that drive time, but that doesn't mean that you wouldn't do it, maybe during your workday. You may have, and because of taking out that commute time, now maybe you have some time where you're a little more freed up to do, for example, the video tutorials where you can actually sit down, you can, write some code, you can do some stuff that's other than simply listening that you get from a podcast. From a Developreneur point of view, we have, at this point, what you would consider established channels and expectations. Google knows that we put content out to the Developreneur site every week, have been for years. We put stuff out to YouTube every week and have for a couple of years. Even like our Vimeo channel doesn't get quite as regularly updated, but it does get, updates. So we have places that we put data. We have these channels where we've been feeding them. We want to continue to feed them. We have grown, not like a ton, but we are slowly growing. We're seeing that there's more users and more followers and things like that. The goal is really, it goes back to just finding ways for not only our community, but also just to help us become better. How to become better developers? What are the things that we need to do? They're going to help us grow. But in doing so, sometimes you get self-focused a little bit. What your path is, what you need to worry about, what's your technologies that you're sitting in, and you may not be as aware of what else is going on in the world around you. So, we want to make sure that we're bringing as many voices as possible into the suggestion pool of, where do we want to go? What do we want to do next? So right now, as we're wrapping up 2021, the podcast is on hiatus right now. Like I said, just finished season 15. Probably do another, I don't know, half dozen, maybe a little bit more episodes before the end of the year. Typically going into Thanksgiving and Christmas weeks, there's sort of like holiday year-end at, specials or whatever that get covered. There may be one or two other little topics that get thrown in while essentially just sort of taking a break for a little bit here. And then likely we'll start in January, start into season 16, whatever that happens to be. This is season 15 is the first one that was full of interviews. Interviewed 6-7 different people, wide range. It was very, it was fun to do. It was entertaining. It was educational. Wouldn't mind going back to that, but it's a different animal to do, to set up and do the interviews than it is some of the other things we do. Not to mention just the focus. You know, when you've got a topic and you sit down, research it, and present it, and you can easily crank that out for 10, 20, 30 episodes. If you've got interviews or interviewees, then they're going to vary a little bit more on their topics. So we'll see where we want to go in there going forward, but that's definitely one of the things that's going to be thrown out to the crowd is, what do we think about the podcast? Is there something that would make that better or worse? The mentor classes, we do them twice a month for the most part. We've been doing twice a month, Saturday, hour and a half for a long time. We did it 2 hours originally. Then we started to cut it back, and we typically, we hit between 1.5 to 2 hours. The format, the content, all of that is up for discussion, as well as, how do we want to do it? Would it be better? Would it help to move to a different day, a different time, to change the time that's included in it? Another thing is the books. There's nothing planned right now. The monthly email that went out, that was, basically an extra blog article a month and sort of highlights of what's going on. That just, I don't think it's sent out this week. I think it's going out next week. It's been on hiatus for about 1.5 years, mostly because I was doing all of those and then got into the COVID season and totally just lost those, fell off of my to-do list stuff. So that's one of those I want to kick back on. Blog articles are minimal outside of what we're pushing for the video tutorials. And, we may or may not go back to adding blog content. That's obviously, or that's another thing that's, it's up for discussion. Speaking of those tutorials, currently the primary channel that we're using for our video and tutorial focus is YouTube. We've got the Developreneur channel there. We turn something out. We have published something every Tuesday and Thursday for nearly 2 years now. It has covered some things that we had done in the past, like the Launch Your Internet Business. But along the way, we have added a lot of the mentor classes, the series that we did on, or sort of just wrapped up on, React Native. That's in there. Those have gotten sliced and diced to about 15 to 20 minute episodes. So we've got those. We've got a long series on Python and Django. We've got another long series on working towards Python certification. And then there's numerous other topics along the way that we've covered in that, in the last almost 2 years. That's, again, something that's open for discussion, whether we, some better ways maybe, or different ways that we could produce that. So I'm about to open this up for discussion. And here's some of the things that I would like to get percolating in your head as we get into this discussion. Is one, first and foremost, just staying with what we've got. Is there timing, scheduling, things like that we should consider that may make it more useful to you, more palatable to you, easier for you to consume? And this could include things like maybe changing the monthly newsletter that comes out. Change it to, maybe it'd help to make it a weekly one with some little summary of, like, here's what we promoted, published this week. I know some places do that. And I think we have in the past as well I know we have, I just can't remember if we did it for Developreneur or Is there anything that it's just like, no, there's no need for us to do that? We might as well just stop putting effort into it. Are there any new goals or topics or services that you'd like to see from us? There are things that we haven't covered. Is there some channel or form of content or something like that we don't provide that would be more useful? Are there any, what can we do? Are there any suggestions for how can we support the community, provide tools, provide ways to help them help themselves? And of course, just to reiterate, are there any topics or focus that you'd like us to do? And that could be a language that we haven't covered. It could be tools that we haven't talked about. It could be career paths and theoretical stuff that we maybe haven't spent as much time on. For example, maybe, object-oriented theory, or get more into patterns or anti-patterns and things like that, which, just a side note, that is the top topic that we've had is if you go to like the top 10 from the podcast, that's the easiest one to see. The top 10 downloaded, listened to podcasts, like 80% of them had to do with patterns and anti-patterns. Now, some of that may be because just they're very search friendly. So, if you're looking up the flyweight pattern, those are keywords. It's easy to, to search and find those. But it could be other stuff. It just seems like those are areas that make more sense from the Developreneur side. But that's, again, it's up for discussion. So I think I'm going to start with, let's start with this. I would sort of open it up, throw it out to the floor, and just, based on these things, see if there are some suggestions, some feedback. Want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on all this?
Me, probably from from a testing perspective, since I'm a tester and most of you guys are mainly from the development background. Like, I would like to see more into, the database testing, because I came across that. I know we test database, but usually we've never talked about that in class. Maybe I would like to see some of that and see what spin you as developers have anytime it comes to database. Like, how do you test it before it comes, to a tester or something like that? Like, okay, which code, SQL code, pretty much a tester would know. Not deep SQL statements, something like that. I would like to see that. Maybe adding different databases that you come across, and we see how you deal with that.
That's a good suggestion. I'm taking notes along the way. So pardon if I get a little quiet here, but I don't think we've done. That's a good area, because I don't think we've ever really spent time. We've talked about databases here and there, but we've never really actually focused on and spent some time on database development. So that actually, we could have definitely a small little series even working on that kind of stuff. So that's good suggestion.
Then what else I can think of is like you all developers, of course we deal with Agile. Do you prefer the Kanban or you prefer going by the sprints? I would like to know what you prefer. Like the way when you get these user stories, do you prefer the sprint or you want to go the Kanban way? So something like that. That's pretty much from me.
Good. We just set the bar high. All right. Who else is going to jump in?
Yeah, I would love to see, first thing first, on the terms of schedule, I was kind of looking through the list. I love the bi-weekly approach. We moved it a couple of times. I think it was on a Tuesday at one point in time. And then we hit the Saturday stride, and it felt good to me. I wasn't able to attend sometimes, but it felt like I was able to attend a lot more often on the Saturday morning. So in terms of topics or things that really kind of interest me, I would love to understand what you probably don't want to reveal the secret sauce to Developreneur, being a podcaster, being a YouTuber, and things like that. I think I may even recall a series on something on that nature, but just talking a little bit about that would be really cool to dig into. I'm not sure if I'm going too fast, but the the other thing that I had in mind was just some of the more, let's say, application architectures. Was it command query response, segregation, responsibility segregation, back end for front end? All those particular patterns. Again, I could be wrong, but I don't recall. Those application architectures, I guess, maybe API design architectures, going into those. I'd love to see some of those. It'd be really cool to see.
Those are good. Those are all good solution or suggestions as well. Yeah, it's good to hear that because it has seemed to work, and that's why we sort of stuck with the Saturday mornings biweekly kind of schedule. But I just want to make sure that's everybody's still good with that, and everybody didn't just fall into a rut and say, "Oh, okay, well, we'll just deal with it." Yeah, we have touched on some of the stuff in the past here and there about the podcaster stuff and the YouTube and things like that, but those are always good to come swing back around to, just because there are other ways for us to grow and sort of, for lack of a better term, show off what we've learned as developers. That's why we all have always pushed that people at least have like a blog site or something to go out and just to do it, to have a channel for your content. It helps you think through stuff, but it's also a great resume thing. It's amazing how many people are impressed that you can put out a blog regularly, or a podcast, or have a YouTube channel or anything like that. And I guess there is definitely some that it's well-earned respect in a sense, because it shows that you can say, hey, I'm going to do this. I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to drive myself to get that stuff done. And the application architecture patterns, that's an excellent suggestion, because I did go through in the podcast, we did a pattern season, we did an anti-pattern season, but really didn't talk about, but they were more like software patterns than architecture patterns. And that was one of the things I was trying to think of, some ways to continue exploring that world of patterns. And application architecture is one that we haven't spent much time on, but that's an excellent suggestion, because we could do that, whether it's podcast episodes, tutorials. We can talk about that in the mentor class. There's a lot of ways that we can build that in and touch on that more, much like David's suggestion about the Kanban and sprints and some of the different ways to deal with Agile. We've touched on it in different ways. Like did a whole season on the Agile Manifesto from the podcast point of view, but then taking that stuff forward, particularly because the Agile Manifesto is 20 years old now, taking it into modern development and some of the things we haven't talked about, like serverless computing and microarchitectures and some of the microservices and things like that are they're out there. People are going to run into them, and there are patterns now in a lot of those areas, but we've never really talked about them. So that's another great bunch of suggestions there.